You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. CanadianTarot.com, your uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community and forum, and The Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from fresh farm ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind.
Dude, the music stopped.
Oh, sorry. I was into it. I like that music. It makes me happy. Good morning
Really?
and hello, kids. Welcome to season 3 and episode number 63. I believe it is. No, 64 of the Daily Beaver here on the Crier Media Network. Today, recording day is Friday, February 24th, 2023. I cannot believe we are almost already through 2 months of this year. Where does the time go? It just zips by. And it is a cold one today here at the Beaver Lodge Kitties. It'll feel between minus 15 and minus 24 today. Brr, so bundle up. I'm your host, the Eager Beaver, pronouns he, him, hey, Mr. Beaver A. And with me was always is my dear friend Mr. Grizzly. I don't know where my mouth was going there. I wanted to say as, but I wanted to go right and it wanted to go left. And we have a very special guest today joining us. But if you weren't listening yesterday, well, if you were listening yesterday, you know who it is. But if you weren't, it'll be a surprise. So we're here to tease you a bit before we reveal who. Of course, a big thank you goes to our podcast's founding sponsors, the Peppermaster, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, and CanadianTarot.com. Today we have a Friday morning beaver bite for you to get both your day and weekend off to a stellar beginning. But first, hello, Mr. Grizzly. How's your mental health today?
Well, hey, Mr. Beaver. My mental health, I think, is pretty good. Little tired. Well, I went to see. Got home from work, had a snack, and then ran a bunch of errands, and then drove across town to go and see Kenny versus Spenny 20th anniversary show, which was hilarious. And then, I texted Spencer to let him know, hey, great show, really enjoyed it, thanks. He's like, oh, dude, you should have texted me earlier. I would have brought you backstage. And I'm like, I really appreciate that next time. But I had to get home because I had to drive across town, have to get to bed to get up for 5 a.m. If I'm going to, look, dude, I've been backstage to concerts and comedy events, and you start having a good time, you start having a few drinks. The next thing you know, you're out at a pub, and then it's 3 a.m. and, oh, damn, I'm liquored and I got to get up and go to work in 2 hours. So I just decided to sidestep that. Because I guarantee you that's what I would have done.
So you're still a teenager.
I'm 19 with 25 years experience.
There you go. Good morning, Kit M. Good morning, Kit Elaine. Lovely to see you this morning. And do you have anything to start us off, Mr. Grizzly?
Yeah, a couple of quick bites here. Question is, Elaine's saying the sound is wonky. I don't know what that's all about, but we'll see if we can get that remedied. A couple of things. First off, this is from Theo Mudakis. Welcome to Two-Tiered Ontario, those who attend Ford daughter's wedding and those who didn't. Which I think is pretty brilliant from Theo. Once again, he knocks that out of the park.
Bravo.
Of course, you also have to understand that this goes right in line with Brittle Star. And Brittle Star's home run. I don't know if you've seen the video. I'll bring it up. Just give me a sec here. Yeah, there it is. I got it. I'll bring up Brittle Star's latest video. Let's see if I can get it to the start here. Yeah, there we go. I'm going to put this up on the screen. I'll mute your mic so there's no echoing, okay? So just sit tight. We'll watch this video for those who of you who have not seen it yet. This is Brittle Star's latest. We all know Stuart. He's a good guy. He's a friend of the Crier Media Network, and we'd like to be able to get him on the show at some point just to have a chin wag, as the saying goes. So here we are. Let's go. Watch this.
Healthcare, there aren't enough doctors or nurses, and people can't always get in to see a doctor or nurse when they feel they need to, either for themselves or their children. Enter private for-profit healthcare that promises to ease the burden on the public system. Sounds great. Using some simple role play, let's see how private for-profit healthcare makes things better. Hello, I would like to make an appointment with a healthcare professional. That'll be $69. I don't have any money. Get out. Now let's see how it works when you do have money. Hello, I would like to make an appointment with a healthcare professional. That'll be $69. You take credit cards? Absolutely. Let's get you healthy. Wonderful. Now I have an advantage over those poor people who can't afford it. Take that, single mother, recently laid off worker, and/or person who really shouldn't be getting sick if they can't afford it. So there you have it. Why bother fixing the public healthcare system? Some people may say, isn't this a slippery slope that will just eventually gut the public healthcare system? You betcha. But don't worry, when private for-profit healthcare becomes the only option, we'll just raise the prices to shake off any dirty poors. Private for-profit healthcare is great, as long as you've got the money.
And that just sums it up so perfectly, so succinctly, so accurately, so nailing it on the head.
Oh, the dirty poors. Ow.
Well, it was the...
Hey.
It was there was another thing I saw earlier. I can't find the tweet right now, but it led to, it started off with cognitive anxiety, Abila CBT for cognitive behavioral therapy for anxiety.
Okay.
And you can get it through the national drug chain owned by a national grocer, starting at the low, totally affordable price for those of us who live paycheck to paycheck of $400.
Ooh, so affordable.
I get anxiety thinking about having to spend $400 I don't have to treat my anxiety. Do you see the conundrum here?
Yeah, I see the loop.
Brutal. Oh, and let's add into that, there's a national grocer chain who is reporting $529 million Q4 profit, revenue up nearly 10%.
Yes,
yeah,
indeed. Yes, indeed. And they're basically saying that it's the suppliers, right? They say that they've got 1,000 or 10,000 different requests from suppliers to have a big increase in prices, and that they're basically trying to fight that. And
when you
I
have
don't know.
10% increase on a $529 million profit. I don't believe that you're trying to fight anything. And how much of that $529 million profit will go to the valuable employees who built the company, make the company operate on a daily basis? They won't see a red cent. All that money goes to the shareholders because, remember, profit is king and shareholders rule. The rest of you poors can die in the gutter.
Oh, man.
Am I being hyperbolic? Am I being over the top?
I wouldn't say so.
Yeah, that's kind of how it is. Shall we bring our good buddy in this morning? Can we bring
Yes, we shall. I was just that's really weird because you mentioned the Loblaw thing, and I just took down some Loblaw.
Oh, I didn't say their name. I said National Grocer. I didn't say their name, remember?
Well, yeah. Well, it is Loblaw. Let's just call it out. But I had actually noted some news from it, and there we go. Yeah, there we go. So yeah, its earnings are up 12% over the same quarter last year, representing an adjusted profit of about $500 million gain. Empire and Metro also say they're not padding prices to increase profits, but Galen Weston Jr. says that all of these are because of, higher labor costs and raw material costs and transportation costs from suppliers that are being passed through.
Put your
And
margins up.
Yeah, that would explain earnings increasing. You got exactly where I was going, but that does not explain your profits increasing, right?
Yeah,
Because, I mean, if you're just passing off the costs one for one, then your profits would be the same. And like I says, Loblaws maintains it has over 10,000 requests from suppliers for significant price increases. At 80% of grocery sales in Canada are controlled by 5 grocery retailers. And basically, Tiff Macklem, the Bank of Canada governor, said when there were cost pressures, businesses have passed those very quickly to final consumers. This, unfortunately, is a symptom of an overheated economy. Companies do need to normalize their pricing behavior. That's part of getting back to 2% inflation. So basically, you're not rowing in the same direction as the rest of the team.
No, this it's just a complete fallacy, and for that he gets one of these.
Yes, you know what? That's actually like very, very, very kind of appropriate music given our guest.
Whoops,
Right?
There we go. Bring him in.
Let's bring him, Kits. You know him, you love him. Yeah, you've asked for him.
Yes, you have,
Our
actually.
most popular guest ever, Kit Hugh. Welcome, good sir. How are you?
Hey, how are you guys doing today? I'm doing fine. It's a Friday. I had a snow day
Thank
yesterday.
goodness.
Life is good.
Awesome.
It seems that people in California are also having a snow day.
Well, that's good they need the snow out there. I don't know if anybody's been paying attention to what's going on with their watershed, but given Lake Mead, well, I think they're rolling up. They're finding all sorts of people that were planted there back in the 50s and 60s who didn't pay their
Yep.
bills in Vegas. So it's an interesting time, I guess.
Cement shoes. They were given cement
shoes.
shoes.
My concern, I'm teaching geography this semester, so the question to my class, who are all First Nations, like from Tyendinagus, they're all kind of Gaia, was, okay, well, what do you think's going to happen to Canada with 20% of all the remaining fresh water on the planet when the Americans run out of all of theirs?
Mm-hmm.
And everybody starts looking our way and thinking we need to be liberated.
That's right.
All part of the game.
Of Canadian battle pigs, cavalry regiment of Canadian battle pigs, and I will command it.
I missed that. Sorry.
No, I was making a joke with a couple of friends on Twitter the other day about defending Canada and how Canadian pigs apparently are now causing a problem in the United States, like pigs, which can be very dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I thought it was the American pigs coming up here, but if the Americans attack, then I want to command a regiment of Canadian battle pigs. So I'll have a cavalry regiment into battle on a pig.
Who leaked our program? Did they tell them where we had they tell them where we hid our battalion of lacrosse sticks and curling brooms?
We don't talk about battle pigs.
That's from the Buster Brown Brigade. So
That was our secret weapon, man.
it is.
Who let it out?
Wasn't me.
Well, we've got stores across the country, but I'll leave that with the Queen of the World, Romana Delgado, to organize that level of resistance.
Do they know about the goats and the llamas yet?
Oh, I hope
Shit.
I hope not.
Well, they're aware of the cobra chickens, but they don't know what the cobra chickens are entirely capable of when they go into battle.
With the pet me signs around their necks.
Yes, pet me. Yes, pet me.
Oh man. Okay, kids. One of the reasons that we have our good friend here is for his military history and expertise, and of course because he's a general all-around good guy and we love him. But today is unfortunately, I don't know why we call these anniversaries. We need a better word for it. But it's the 1-year anniversary of the other shit stain, the one who is an orange, deciding to invade a country, deciding, that basically, you don't need to knock on your neighbor's door before you're going to come in and say you're going to take a cup of sugar. So, right. So things are pretty bad at the moment, and because we're in the protracted phase of the war, and we had Prime Minister Petro Poroshenko, who had the best quote so far, saying something like, it's 9 years into this war, and it's the 365th day of the 3-day war. So it's pretty much where we are. The UN estimates that greater than 8 million people have left Ukraine since the war began, that 13 million are displaced, greater than 8,000 civilian women, children, and men have been killed in the last year, and that the cost of damage to the country is estimated to be well over $100 billion. It's costly for all sides. And as Bo of the Fifth Column says, we're getting to the phase of the war where it's basically not how much can you dish out, but how much can you take. And on Russia's side, greater than 50,000 Russian troops have died. Estimates are that Russia is losing about 5,000 soldiers per week. That's probably more in 2 weeks than the U.S. has lost in both its most recent wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. And basically, for every 100 meters of land that Russia gains on the Eastern Front, it is losing 2,000 soldiers. The United States also believes that the Wagner Group, which is basically a mercenary group that what's-his-face has been hiring out to do the real dirty work, suffered at least 30,000 casualties. That's dead and wounded, but about 9,000 dead. Most of them being untrained convicts that were released in order to fight. So we're basically, using the 6th and 7th line, and they're not getting the best of training before they're being going in. So just basically cannon fodder. And the founder of the Wagner Group, Yevgeny Prigozhin, has basically announced that it would cease its policy of recruiting prisoners because I'm guessing it hasn't been working out for them.
They're running out of prisoners.
And then yesterday, the UN had a vote on a resolution that Moscow withdraw its troops, stop fighting, and work towards a comprehensive, just, and lasting peace in Ukraine. That passed 142-7 with 32 abstentions. So there are still 39 nations in the world who are willing to, 7 willing to be with them and 32 willing to just watch and let it happen. And that's basically where things stand at the moment. There are other things to talk about, but we'll bring in Hugh at this moment, our good friend, and ask, what are your thoughts today?
Okay. Well, you're absolutely right. This is not the first anniversary of this war. This war actually has been the seeds of this conflict we can find right in the collapse of the Soviet Union. And back in 1990, 1991, when as part of the agreement between Soviet Union and Russia, when it was in a very weak position to NATO, was that the unification of Germany was allowed under the caveat that NATO would not expand further into the east. Of course, everybody agreed to that. Of course, the very next thing that happens is we get something called the Partnership for Peace, which I was peripherally involved with back in the day when I was in the Navy. But basically, this was the creeping east by stealth of NATO, pushing it right up against the Russian borders. I'm an officer back then, thinking to myself, probably not going to end well. Well, okay. Well, 2014, we get to the little green men, and we get to Crimea, and we see Russia basically pushing back. Now, I have absolutely no love for Russia. What they're doing is absolutely horrendously criminal and against international law.
Mm-hmm.
But we also have to understand that they're at least on the Russian side, I see two things at play here from their philosophy and their perspective. The casualty figures that you're mentioning are absolutely horrendous. Like literally in terms of combat casualties, we're looking at World War I level losses here. It's sort of like Verdun GoPro cameras capturing everything. The Russian forces are they're like, okay, in NATO terms, if we were a unit that receives, say, 15 to 20% combat casualties, and that just means people knocked out of the fight, not just necessarily killed, but just wounded or unable to continue on. Mm-hmm. We consider that unit to be combat ineffective. It no longer has the personnel in the right positions and the training and the organization to complete its operational objectives, whatever those are. It depends on the level of the organization. But if you're looking at a rifle section or a platoon, for example, 4 guys, you lose 10, 15 guys. That's a huge fraction of your combat power. The Russians are grinding through, like, I don't know if you've seen any of the pictures of some of the cemeteries behind the lines. The figures that I've seen with respect to Wagner Group alone, which has been doing a lot of the shock warfare or the assault warfare. I've seen some of the casualty rate figures they're showing, and this is it's an estimate, but around 50,000 dead already. So they've the amount of grinding attrition that is being conducted here. No other country in the world could sustain this. I don't know if anybody remembers that movie with Jude Law, Enemy at the Gates, about Stalingrad. The guys coming off the boats, one guy's handed a rifle, one guy's handed ammunition, and off you go. That's essentially the level of not just training, but the level of technology that Russia is now pursuing this war with. They've, because of the economics of the I call it like the Americans in the South and during their Civil War, an anaconda strategy, really an economic strategy to squeeze off and isolate Russia. They've been able to limit the amount of resources that Russia needs in order to manufacture a lot of their high-tech and sophisticated equipment. So like their missiles and things like that. They're now down to a point where they can produce, because most of those require Western manufactured computer chips and subsystems in order to go into them. Because their industry is so depleted from it's converging catastrophes that are hitting them. Their economy is getting crushed by Western sanctions. They don't have the ability to sell oil to anybody. The people who they can sell oil to, they don't have the sea lift capability to actually get the oil to the markets. Right. So that's putting pressure on them. At the beginning of the war, massive brain drain, where anybody with a brain got the hell out of Russia before the conscription laws started.
And so then they lost another 700,000 since then, at least.
Yep. And so this war is being prosecuted by basically the people who are least competent and least able to do it. Plus, we also see that over the last 15, 20 years, I would call it Major Krupski has ensured that the Russian war stocks are already depleted. Oops, second, gotta get my dog. Thank you. She didn't do anything else. All right, thanks. So we've a situation where Russia is running out of everything except manpower, and that's what it's throwing at the problem. The only reason I see that they can do this is because they currently still see that the war aims of Putin are still in matching the war aims of Russia, of the Rodina, the people of the Russian population, who, despite what they think about their government, despite what they think about their leadership, if there's a threat to the homeland, just like the Second World War, or going back, if you look at what happened with Napoleon, They don't care who's necessarily in charge, because it's a threat against the homeland, and they will resist that. So as long as they still see this war as being a war of existence, of existential survival, they will carry this forward. Ukraine is in a different position. Ukraine is in, I wouldn't want to call them fortunate, but they're on the defensive right now, and they've been able to do a persistent defensive strategy, which basically is an attrition strategy. What we might call a Fabian strategy. Basically, what they're doing is they're using towns like Bakhmut, which is well, there's not really much left of Bakhmut anymore,
Right.
but they're using these points, which the Russians are throwing tremendous amounts of combat power at, as a meat grinder, and they're trading the Russian forces, and slowly trading a little bit of territory, not very important territory, unless you live there. And I don't mean that to sound callous, because these are
but it's
people's
not
homes.
particularly strategic.
Yeah, but it's not strategic, it's not vital, and they can trade that, and all they do is they just pull back to another defensive position, and literally it's like World War I. Right now, actually, because of the logistics problems the Russians have, their ability to support their troops in the front lines is very, very limited. To the point where they're running out of artillery shells and a lot of the more sophisticated weapon systems which they were using to pursue their strategy. So far in this war, they've lost close to, I believe, 1,500 tanks.
And some of them are being repurposed, right? Because
a
Ukrainians
lot of them are being
repurposed.
Not only that, but this is they're being refurbished and being repurposed. Plus, Ukraine is getting a tremendous. They are, for all intents and purposes, a de facto NATO member now. Their training, their operational doctrine, everything they're doing is and their operation execution is vastly, like, they're probably the most professional army in Europe right now. So
and in modern warfare now.
Yeah.
As well, but like when you were mentioning logistics, that's the thing that sparked it. Because when I was listening to Bo of the Fifth Column, he was saying amateurs speak in tactics and experts speak in logistics, right? Yes. So, and what you were mentioning, that the meat grinder, Russia seems to only have brute force at this moment, and everybody's wondering about whether or not he'll use the nuclear option. And what Bo was saying on his program that resonated with me is that if he's thinking of trying to take Ukraine, then he's thinking about his legacy. And if a man is thinking about his legacy, he's not thinking about blowing up the world.
We can hope that.
I don't know, but there could be a point of no return. Still,
there will be. Like if things go south, and if he's backed into a corner, I don't know. I hope not, but we have to be very careful with this, because this is the first time that we've had a war like this where a weak great power, like a nuclear power, is being cornered. Right. Anytime a country is cornered in a war of, especially a war of an existential conflict like this, or what's perceived as existential, they generally get into a situation where they will use whatever weapons are at their disposal.
Right.
Now, whether that means dropping a nuke in the middle of nowhere and as a warning to everybody that, well, we're calling this war over and we win. They might do that. However, how NATO responds to that, and how the West responds to that is anybody's guess. I don't know. I see this war. Like continuing on, and I think that we're going to see some major changes this summer. Once the terrain firms up enough that aggressive combat operations can ensue, I think the Ukrainians are going to be in a very well-placed position to take back a lot of territory from an incredibly exhausted and burned out Russian force.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's like you were saying, it's like the main problem for Russia hasn't been fixed in terms of being able to supply itself, and now the conditions are more difficult because of sanctions and everything that you were mentioning. And as you were mentioning, because you were getting to the Ukrainian side, how they were having an advantage. And I mean, the Ukrainians, I mean, just Canada's contribution, right? We've given combat medical training to them that they've received, that they say that they found invaluable. We've trained 33,000 Ukrainians prior to the start of the war, and each one of them can train someone, and we train them to higher standards.
In order for like a NATO quality force, like a soldier to go from being a civilian to being on the front line in a combat organization doing operational mandates and things like that, you're looking at least, well, be 10, 12 weeks for basic training. That's just so you know how to act as a soldier. Then it would be another 10, 12 weeks of phase training before you're actually in a position where you actually are competent enough and understand the systems and the communications and all the supporting infrastructure that you need to understand in order to be an effective part of that force. So, but they've been doing that. So we've been training them since about 2014. We've been putting a lot of investment into this. And it's going. I think we're going to see that pay off with respect to Ukraine taking back a lot of territory in this coming spring.
And the training's continuing, right, with Operation Unifier at the moment.
Oh yeah. And now, with respect to what we're talking about, logistics versus tactics, they're all. It's of course it's a coordinated whole, but there's something in the military we used to call a tooth to tail ratio, which is looking at how many people in the echelon, the various levels of support are required to keep one guy going at the sharp end. So the soldier in the frontline trench has a number of people who are supporting him to keep him there, like medical support, food, logistics, weapons techs, everything like that, all the maintenance and everything that you need in a modern military, communications, artillery support, drones now. I mean, that's absolutely amazing the way the drones have changed warfare. And this is what I would call truly a revolution in military affairs that is equal to what we went through back in the 90s when we started to computerize everything. So back in the sorry, I got a poodle here that's
guest appearance.
we got a puppy cam. Bring in the puppy. There we go. Hey, buddy.
Oh,
look at Grace. Yeah, Grace the poodle.
Oh, hello. Hey, Gracie.
Say goodbye, Gracie.
In NATO organizations, I think the ratio these days, it's changed. It's gone down a little bit because they use a lot of civilian contractors now, but it's about 15, 16 people in the log chain to one guy in the forces fighting. In Russia right now, it's about maybe 1-to-1 ratio. So they don't have a lot of people behind the lines who are putting any effort into supporting the guys and keeping them going in the front lines, which I think is one of their major problems. Their equipment, the equipment that the Russian soldiers have is absolutely abysmal.
Wow.
Well, and their training is virtually non-existent.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Whereas, well, the Ukrainian, correct me if I'm wrong, but did Ukraine not have the largest standing army in Europe at the time of the invasion?
I think Russia
largest with Turkey.
But it's fairly large, though. Yes. Oh, in terms of NATO, yes, they certainly did. I think I forget what their standing army was, but it was. Oh, I'd only be a ballpark guess now, but it was certainly significant, anyways.
Well, and you know that Poland is chomping at the bit, absolutely chomping at the bit to get the they have F-16s. They are ready for an incursion so that they can just bomb the living shit.
Poland is that one country in the corner going, let's fucking go,
let's
man.
Go, let's go.
Earrings. Let's go, man. Hold my poodle.
My kids laugh at me and roll their eyes when I say, "Oh, it's time for my evening dose of Polish propaganda." I watch the Polish TV, and they've got this show called Military Minds, and it's well, don't watch it on like if you're hungry or not, because it's pretty graphic. I'm surprised they actually let it on YouTube, but Poland is certainly. If there's one country in NATO that is willing to walk into this on Ukraine's side, it's going to be Poland.
Yeah. And they will take no prisoners. They will be stormtroopers.
And they also have a tremendous one of the most effective forces in NATO as well.
Mhm.
Yes, they're very powerful nation in NATO. I think they're probably about second to Germany, I think, in terms of their combat capability right now.
That's probably why it was very important for Biden to take a little stop and visit the Bucharest Nine there and deliver that little speech, because
Yeah,
Poland.
that's
Yep.
right. Got to keep everybody in check here because we don't want
I, bel
everybody to get too crazy.
I believe he did that in Poland
Yes, he did.
too.
I think he stopped. Yeah, he was in Poland. That's right.
Yes. Hmm.
Well, a good buddy of mine is he immigrated here from Poland. He's living in Ecuador right now, but every now and then we'll connect online, and he's like, "Yeah, we're ready to go. We're ready to go." And
Oh, yeah.
I don't know about you, but there's a lot of to try and expand my horizons, I try and watch as much possible as many possible programs from around the world as I can get. And there is a ton of shows on Netflix that are out of Poland, and they're really good. Like they're
Oh, yeah.
all really good. So I'm trying to get in touch with that part of the culture that I wouldn't say we've been exposed to a great deal in Canada. There is a Polish community in this country, but it's
Mhm.
never been sort of parading. I don't, you know
No.
what I mean? Like it's sort
No.
of under the radar, under the surface.
We got a big boost because the Poles during the Free Poles during the Second World War were organized with the Canadian Army during the Second World War,
Right.
and so a lot of those guys after the war when it went communist, they were devout anti-communists, so they came to Canada after the war. But well, I mean, the Russians have some historical baggage and of the way that they've treated the Poles. I mean, people tend to forget it wasn't just Germany that invaded Poland in
Yeah.
1939. They got tag teamed by Russia as well,
Yeah.
and the Russians massacred most of the Polish officer corps that they got their hands on. So there's a fair amount of bad blood on the North German plain.
Yeah. A little bit of historical. What's the term I'm looking for? Hatred.
Yeah, basically,
I
yeah.
think
So
it should be. I don't know what's going to come of this. Nobody does. And the concern is, what if he decides to go nuclear? I'm like, well, then put your head between your legs and kiss your ass goodbye, because if that were to happen, I do not want to live through nuclear holocaust. I don't. I don't want to come out the other side of that. I will, I'll say goodnight and be on my merry way, because quite frankly, the other side of that, I think it would be worse than all of the films we've ever watched about it.
yep. It's a lot of the stuff that we got when we were kids back in the 80s about nuclear war and thermonuclear war and everything was based on some rather optimistic science.
Yes.
It doesn't actually take that much of destruction to actually create a global nuclear winter effect. Actually,
Mhm.
I saw a report looking at a limited exchange, between Pakistan and India, which again is another issue, as well as Pakistan and China, or India and China, and even a limited exchange in that part of the world would certainly have serious climactic effects on us here in Canada. So, yeah, that'd be bad.
Well, I did have this conversation not too long ago, and I think I did discuss this with Mr. Beaver about how a person I know here in town said, I don't live in the downtown core. I live in the south end of the city. Will I be okay? And I'm like, no, you won't. Ottawa's a target. We're the national capital of a G7 NATO country.
Yep.
They will drop a bomb on the hill. I'm gone. I'm vaporized, right? Because I live
I figure I'm
1.2 kilometers away, right? So it would be the end of us all. And they're like, well,
Yep.
I'm out. I'm like, no. The blast alone, the shockwave alone will tear you apart. You don't want to survive it. It's not
Well, I mean,
warfare.
there are the various effects. You've got blast, which is a big one. You have the EMP, which is the secondary effect of nuclear weapons. You've got the radiological effect, and then you've got the thermal effect. You get a thermal blast, like the amount of heat that these things create is well, it's the order of the sun.
That's right.
So yeah, and like I don't know, I had a conversation with some of my students about these issues last year, I guess it was, because we were east of Belleville here, and they're like, well, what would happen here? I'm like, well, if they Trenton is of course targeted.
Yeah.
And I think it's got 3 or 4 serious warheads targeted at it, or at least it used back in the 80s. We'd probably have enough time to say, huh, what's that?
Yeah, that would be about it. Yeah.
So, oh well.
Oh,
Can't
well.
worry about that sort of stuff. We can't deal too much with that. So hopefully we can just wind this war down. I don't know. It's like I mean I've got tremendous, like I've said before, but I've got tremendous respect and empathy for anybody who is caught up in any type of war on both sides, because like the Russian soldiers who are being forced to do this are equally as victimized as anybody else in this bloody conflict. They don't want to be there. The Ukrainians are doing their damnedest. They're taking horrendous casualties to defend their territory, and if I was there, I'd probably be doing the same thing. From my perspective here in the West, though, I got to think to myself, well, what's in our best interest for Canada? Like, is Russia an existential threat to the West? Can we wind this war down? Can we find, is there any way that we can find I guess a path to peace other than one side winning and one side losing? I don't know if that's possible. I don't think the Ukrainians are willing to put up with anything like that, other than complete and utter Russians off of all their territory, including Crimea.
At this point,
and I don't see the Russians, given the investment of money that they're putting and bodies they're putting into this war. I don't see them backing down either. So until they get more and more tired, I think this thing's going to grind on for quite a while.
Yep. And we're not even at the part where, let's say, Russia does succeed, because it decides it can take more. Then they have to occupy.
Yes.
Which is not particularly easy.
No. I mean, and
it's like then the fun begins, so to speak.
Well, they're already doing that, and they're doing some very interesting. I guess what would you call it? I will hesitate to use the word genocide, but in terms of cultural disruption, we are seeing a lot of that. Linda, yes, we are under virtual attack from misinformation and bot farms in Russia. But that's a very good question. But one of the other points I'd like to make about that is that according to CSIS and American intelligence and international intelligence agencies, one of the things that they're most surprised about in this war is that we were expecting to see a heck of a lot more of this from Russia,
especially the cyber aspect,
especially the cyber war. We're not seeing that, and their conclusion is that one of the reasons we're not seeing that is a lot of the people who are sophisticated enough to engage in that sort of work got the hell out of the country at the beginning of the war. So they had a massive brain drain, so they don't have the people there to actually run these ops. That's why a lot of the ones you see are very, very cringe, like really super, like just bad.
Interesting. I hadn't thought of that part. When you were talking about our interests, right? What are our interests as Canada? What it is as the West? We keep on talking about it from our aspect, right? What are our interests? But there are other players on this planet, right? So when you were talking about the sanctions, for example, people are saying, people who know this are seeming, my sense from it seem to say that the sanctions are going to start to bite probably around this time now, because it's not like Russia hasn't been able to sell any oil. They've been selling it to India. They've been selling it to China, to even to South Africa. I think even in some instances to Turkey in interesting ways, who's a NATO ally. Like Turkey's in a really weird position on this one, right? Geographically, for one, and then energy-wise. But they were trying that, and and India and China are very, very, very happy to buy. But again, as we're talking, interests and not friends.
Yeah.
Right. Well, India has bought 33 times more oil, apparently, than it normally buys. But India and China have also know that they have Russia over a barrel and have demanded deep, deep, deep discounts on that oil.
Well,
and year-on-year revenues from oil have dropped 46%. They're getting it from about half price, and then there's the cap from everybody else. Right, that goes along with that.
Cap. Yep.
Right. So whereas Russia was running an enormous deficit before the war, now it is running an enormous surplus. Now it's running a deficit, and it's estimated that Russia has pretty much gone through all of its cash reserves at the moment. So this is where the sanctions start to bite, and because they don't have anything else to maintain the illusion to the people, because they've gone through that now. Now, the resilience of the Russian economy seems to be a thing, because the IMF says the Russian economy is even expected to grow. But with China getting close, right? I mean, I'm sure Putin is realizing that he's becoming some type of a vassal or client state now, right? Which is probably not his objective going in.
No.
I mean, he wanted less NATO. Now he's got Sweden and Finland, and he's got the eastern flank like really, really armed up now, right? And then he's got China saying, sure, we'll sit idly by and not say anything and say that we're neutral and wink, nig, and nudge, slip you a couple of cards under the table. But, we need resources, and you're going to give them to us half off.
Yeah.
And I think, once China gets your claws into you, it's hard to get out.
Well, yeah, and Russia's was, and I think honestly, I think Putin actually quite firmly understood this. Russia has always tried to maintain an aura of power and international presence that is. Well, they've always tried to write checks that their mouths write checks that their wallets can't cash in a lot of ways, politically. They've always tried to, because they realize that they are, of all the I guess the triad of great powers, if you want to look at right now, and actually maybe even call it a quadrangle of great powers, because we've got India that is certainly a nuclear and military power that is set to overtake China, at least in terms of population.
Especially since they're building the second seaport.
Yep. Yeah. So but we've got a situation where we've got the United States, which is still on top, but slightly declining a bit slowly. You've got Russia, which is the weakest by far, and then China, which is coming up and catching up with the United States. You've got two major great powers, a weak great power, and then you've got the great game that's going on in the Euro Asian homeland. Mm-hmm. Russia is in a very tricky position with this, and you're right. Like a lot of the workarounds that they have for their economy require a tremendous amount of investment, which is impossible for them to do right now, because their economy is basically geared to a war footing right now. Mm-hmm. So they can't do everything all at once. They don't have enough people to both fight the war, equip the forces, make the artillery shells and the tanks and everything. Figure they can make maybe what was it? 40 missiles a month is what they're able to produce now, and that's a volley of missiles. That's a one-day attack across Ukraine. So they can't do that as well as build pipelines to China or India across or through the Himalayas in order to transport bitumen and oil and gas products.
Well, that's the other thing, right? I think 80% of their pipeline capacity goes towards Europe. So while they can, for other people to buy their oil, it's more expensive and takes longer for them to ship it there.
Yeah, and it was really, really unfortunate for them that the Nord Stream 1 and 2 had that minor problem there and had the little burp on the underside of the Baltic Ocean there. Gee, I wonder how that happened.
Did we do that?
No, Russia must have done it. They must have done it. They punched themselves.
They did it. Yeah. Putin must have destroyed his own pipeline, right? I mean, that's the way these things
Yeah,
go, right?
yeah. It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how that goes with Hirsch, because I'd like he's going to be challenged hard. But it's interesting to see the way he has and hasn't been challenged over this. A lot of the American press has been calling him a crazy old man, and he's lost it and everything. Well, okay, great. Well, you said the same thing after Milai, said the same thing after Abu Ghraib, and he was proven right in both counts. Plus, there's a tremendous amount of strategic logic behind the United States doing that to these pipelines, because what that did was that sort of forced, especially Germany, to play ball with the Americans when it comes to sanctions on Russia. So.
Yep. And Europe has been surprisingly quite good at building up some reserves in the intervening period and finding other sources. I don't think Russia had planned for them to be able to pivot that well.
No. So, well, they're still working on building up their sea lift, especially with LNG, liquid natural gas, because that's what a lot of the power generation and heating is done off of.
Mhm.
So they're building up their ports for that. But again, they're not in the position of Russia. They've got enough resources that they can make those switches and everything and fairly quickly. So they're able to cover off from what they lost from Russia anyways. But it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Now, one of the things that I heard that was really interesting is that it seems that Ukraine is burning through artillery shells faster than the Western defense industry at the moment can make them.
Yep.
They're going to about 10 to 12,000 shells a day. And according, in terms of supply issues, it seems that the logistics here is that according to NATO, larger caliber ammunition, the wait time for it has gone from 12 to 28 months.
Yeah.
Because of just the increased demand. And it seems that Russia is aware of this and has been sending up some type of decoy things with mirrors and stuff to try to get Ukraine to waste some of the ammunition, basically shooting at stuff. And Ukraine seems to be rationing, I would say, its shots at the moment. So
They both are.
what happens if I mean, I assume Russia's running out too. Yes, no.
Yes, they are. They were at the beginning of the war. They were consuming 152 millimeter artillery shells, which are their standard round. They've got different calibers and everything, but pardon me. The 152 is basically the standard. Get down.
So crazy.
Basically, the standard artillery shell, and so they're I don't know, they're about 3-4 feet long, 152 millimeters in diameter, and they're made out of steel. They're packed with explosives, but artillery shells aren't just like a big bullet. They also have a very, very sophisticated fusing system that goes into them for timing, for air burst or for ground burst, radio proximity, all these. So they're actually a very, very sophisticated system. They were using them at a rate of about 60,000 per day at the beginning of the war. They're down to about 20,000 per day now, which is still this is still World War I scale use of artillery. The Russian tactics are basically what we might call a grid square eraser. You pick the terrain that you want to capture, you wipe it out with whatever's there, erase everything with your artillery. Then the infantry walks in and takes it over. I mean, it's going back to 1917, but it's costly, but it's effective. The Ukrainians on the other side, they have their problems are equal, because they're not just using the standard like the 155 millimeter, the NATO rounds, but a lot of their I guess their most strategic system for long range interdiction and attack is the HIMARS system, which is the rocket propelled artillery system. Now they also have decoys for those. I don't know if you remember back in the Second World War, in the lead up to D-Day, they had Patton with his fake army up in the north of England there to decoy the Germans. And they had inflatable tanks that the Germans would fly over and see and count all these tanks and say, okay, well, that's where the army is. They've got the same thing now with HIMARS. They've got big, huge,
Mhm.
inflatable HIMARS that are being made. I think they're being made in Germany actually, and they look, yeah, from fairly close, they look like the real deal. But I mean, spoofing is going to happen on both sides. That's just part of the game. But the Ukrainians, because the Ukrainians are on the defensive, though, there's the rule of thumb for combat is 3-1. So if you're an attacking force, you need approximately 3 times the resources and manpower and everything as a defending force to occupy or to attack that and assault successfully that same area. So even though Ukraine is running low on shells and they're using them a lot more infrequently, they've managed to organize their system in a fantastic way. Like their entire artillery network for the entire country is like an Uber. Everybody on the battlefield has got access to a communication device. And let's say you're flying your drone or you're in the front lines and you find a concentration of Russian troops there who are taking a smoke break down the road there, and you see them, they're all huddled together. Dial it into your local artillery Uber, and the fire mission goes out. Central dispatch tasks 1 gun, 3 rounds on this target at this time. Fire mission is fired. Guys are killed. And that's how they're managing the resources. So they're using them much more efficiently than the Russians are. Now, the Russian artillery, as far as the militaries go, it's probably the most efficient and best trained part of their military force. Russian artillery is nothing to sneeze at. It's incredibly accurate, incredibly dangerous. But there's another problem. All these guns you're shooting these massive artillery shells out of. Every time you put a round through a tube like that, because they're rifled, you're wearing out some of that rifling. Every time you do that, the range drops. The accuracy gets less and less accurate, and your probability of hitting within a certain square area yardage is going to get progressively larger as the air increases. Over time, all these guns that they're shooting need new barrels. They don't have the ability to replace a lot of these tubes or to refurbish them or everything. They simply don't have the industrial capacity to manufacture and repair and keep that going. On the Ukrainian side, their problems are a little bit different, but they still have a lot of logistics problems. They've got an embarrassment of riches in a lot of ways. The weapon systems that are coming to them are all NATO standards. So generally speaking, you're using the same size rounds, like 120 millimeter for tank rounds, 155 millimeter for artillery rounds, the HIMARS, and all these things. So you've got commonality with respect to some, like the first and second order logistics. But you still have like tanks coming from Britain, which are not the same as tanks coming from the United States. Like the Challenger, great tank. Yep, they're wonderful tanks, but they are a completely different maintenance routines, training on them, operational doctrine. Well, not doctrine, but operational like the routines and everything. Than an M1 Abrams. M1 Abrams have a gas turbine engine as opposed to a diesel engine, which means that they need different types of fuel. They and their engine life cycles and their time in combat and everything. Their equipment maintenance is going to be different. You need another group of your tankers have to be trained specifically for those, and in a pinch they can't cross train each other. Right. That's one of the problems with the standardization. That's probably why the Leopards are pretty good. In fact, that's why the Canadians sent the Leopards so quickly, is now they're using those Leopards to train the Ukrainians, so when they get all the other Leopard tanks, everybody will be up to speed on. And I think that's probably what they're going to standardize on as their major kit. But
yeah, I think a lot of Canadians wound up surprised by that ours were the first ones there.
Well, they flew them over in the C-17s, just out of Kingston or of Trenton here. Yeah, the C-17 can carry. I think it can carry 1 at a time because they're pretty heavy aircraft or pretty heavy vehicles. Yeah.
So
I almost got run over by one once.
Right. Now, see, that's the thing I'm saying about all these armchair quarterbacks, right? When they're talking about Canada, right? Like, oh well, you're not really contributing much because you don't have a lot. It's not only about what, it's about when you come in. And right, when it came to all the sanctions, right,
Yeah.
the fact that we had a Christopher Freeland who happened to be the person in the position at the time who happened to have this particular set of skills and expertise, which is, I mean, she's a unicorn in this particular instance, was able to bring to everybody together on the sanctions. Getting our tanks there first so that everybody can train, being in the game before so that we can train 33,000 soldiers that trained other people before, being there with the UK with Operation Unifier, where yes, I know normally we would get 24 weeks, but they're at least getting 5, whereas Russia is taking people out of jail and just like, there you go, slapping them on the back and say, good luck, buddy. Right. And even like things like the long johns, right? There are like videos all over like this with the Ukrainian soldiers, like, thanks for the long johns, because they're actually warmer, can actually stay outside longer because they're made here with our winter, right? It's like clothes do matter.
Just like I've done winter warfare training, and in Arctic warfare training, it's not just a nice to have. It is mission critical. When you are cold, you're not thinking clearly. You can't do the operations that you would normally conduct as effectively or efficiently. You can't even think straight. The colder you get, the more food your body needs in order to try to stay warm. When you're cold and wet, your hypothermia sets in. Anybody who's been camping knows how miserable you feel. Well, now try to conduct a hasty ambush or something while you're freezing your ass off like that. Your brain slow down, and I've seen this in some of the footage of some drone footage, combat porn of how soldiers are operating in these firefights, where you see the Ukrainians who've got proper NATO issue and Canadian and Swedish like winter warfare kits. So they've got Gore-Tex, they've got the fleecy liners, best piece of kit ever invented, they've got all the tools with them. So these guys are warm. They're motivated. They're able to function. They're fighting guys who are uncoordinated, who are doing basically making fundamental mistakes that you would see out of raw recruits who are just engaging in like combat training for the first time, where you're like battle drill number 1, reaction to coming under effective enemy fire, double tap, dash, down, roll, observe, report back to command. Like all these drills that are second nature, that are happening so quickly that people who are trained like a unit, it's like a football team. Right. Everybody knows what they do in a certain circumstance. Boom. You don't even
there's a choreography.
If you've got a well-trained team and you practice and you've rehearsed it and you do it all the time, you've got a situation where people, you don't even have to, as a commander, you don't even have to issue orders. You don't say, Steve, get over here and do this. Bill, go over there, do that. Sergeant, go back and bring up the truck. Nobody has to do that because everybody knows exactly what they do. And they got the drills down. Boom, boom, boom. And so your reaction is you're inside the enemy's operational cycle. Right. The Russians can't do that right now. Their tactics are very basic, and from what I've seen, I mean, I'm not saying they're all like this because there's some very competent Russian forces there. But what we're seeing, and especially in places like Bakhmut with the Wagner, although Wagner is basically at this point, I think it's a spent force. The Russians are cutting off the tap to them. I think Prigozhin has sort of overstepped his bounds, and I wouldn't be surprised if in the next couple of months he doesn't have an unfortunate accident with a window.
Yes, well, especially now that Medvedev has tailed it off to Norway, I think it is, and is talking a lot.
Yes, they call it defenestration. Defenestration. That's it.
Defenestration. Yes.
Defenestration.
A lot of that lately in Russia.
Yeah. Oops. Yeah. It's amazing for a country that's so good at the Olympics, how clumsy the average intelligence person appears to be.
If they're near a window or a stairwell.
I guess that's why they never made the figure skating team, I guess. And that's why they went into psyops. Guess he should have been able to cross cut better.
Right. Well.
here's the thing I was wondering your opinion about on this one, because now that they have the tanks, and there was some hesitation with that, of course, no sooner did they get the okay for the tanks. No sooner was one not even probably loaded on a plane. This, okay, now how about them jets? Now, again, Poland is like, yeah, we got some MiGs.
Yep.
Let's go.
Yeah.
And like with the tanks, like we already have 25 Canadian Armed Forces members in Poland who are training the Ukrainian Armed Forces on the use of the Leopard 2 tanks. So, the same thing goes for that for whatever jets they get. Now, I'm sure that the Ukrainians are more familiar with the MiGs, but if we give other types of jets, I've also heard it takes about 3 years to train a pilot. So, I mean, there's fully trained, when you have the time and the luxury.
From
But if you
scratch.
have to emergency train, like, how
Yeah.
quickly can people get on them if we were to deliver them? What would be the delay?
Okay, there's a difference between training a pilot from scratch and
Right.
like growing your own pilot and
Yeah, they might already have. They
pilot
already do have pilots.
converting over to a different system.
Right.
I mean, pilots are quite capable and competent of learning the new systems very quickly. You get, like, I know you saw Top Gun there. It wasn't. I hate Tom Cruise, but it was at that part of it at the beginning was at least a decent aspect of it, where he's got the big manuals and everything. He's like, you guys all understand this stuff already. Boom. Well, yeah, but those are the procedures that you need to have and everything. Pilots will be able to do that, and it won't take very long. For the flight crews, I like to convert from like a MiG-29 to an F-16, for example, or a Eurofighter. I think Eurofighters is one of the ones they're looking at. There will be some conversion because you're going from an analog aircraft to an all-glass cockpit. So you're upgrading in the technology, but that's just learning how to manage the flight systems. And once you've got that up, the flight systems in a NATO, well, I shouldn't say NATO because the MiG-29s are NATO too, but from the F-16s and things like that are much. They take a lot of the workload off of the pilot, so the pilot can concentrate on the mission more. The biggest problem is going to be with respect to maintenance and the logistics of it, because you're dealing with different power plants, you're dealing with different supply systems, and all the parts are going to have to come from somewhere else. You won't be able to just go over and strip the MiG that's got a blown engine that's at the side of the runway there, and take other parts off it and cannibalize it to make the others work. So there will be an issue with that. Plus, American, Canadian, like fighters, the F-18, the F-16, F-15, things like that, they generally use pressurized gas, like pressurized fueling systems. So you need special handling capability for that. A MiG-29, you can literally fill it up out of a jerry can if you have to. And they're also designed to operate in much rougher conditions. One of the things that the Russians were very good at with all their designs is ensuring that they can operate off of gravel airstrips. There aren't too many jets that can do that because, well, like an F-16, you start kicking up a lot of gravel or dirt and dust into your main engine intake, which is that big smiley face on the underside of the plane. You're putting that right through your engine, and you're going to destroy your engine's lifespan very, very quickly, or erode its lifespan quickly. So the where they'll be able to operate them out of, that might be a bit of a problem as well. But the Russian, on the other side, we also have to remember that Russia has, as one of their cards left in their deck, is that they haven't committed most of their air power yet. They still have about 80% of their air power in reserve. So, like a lot of their tactical air power and everything is still available. Their strategic air power, we've seen they're still being able to use. They're still using that. So it's there's a good chance that we might see them ramping up their use of air assets in order to compensate for their lack of artillery shells, lack of infrastructure on the ground to make up for it. Which is part of their doctrine too, because I mean, just like they learned how to blitzkrieg the Germans in the Second World War, using air power as a ground support tool in order to pave the way for the ground forces to move through. Yeah, don't be too sure about that. saucy sea witch. That's another aspect. Like their artillery is very good. Their pilots are generally speaking very good. Now, whether their maintenance of those aircraft is any better, that is something to be seen. And that's probably where we're going to see how long they can maintain their an air offensive, if you will.
For the kits listening at home, the comment was hopefully their air power is as shitty as the rest of their gear. Just so you know, to what Hugh was responding.
Yeah, but we're seeing the Russians are doing a lot of workarounds, like their Black Sea Fleet, what's left of it. Ha ha ha. The sorry.
How many ships were promoted to submarine?
But well, yeah. Oh man, that was funny. But well, no, it wasn't. It was anything but funny. But when Moskva got hit, I was thinking to myself, I understand they've got 30 millimeter air defense systems. I understand they've got all this technology. What happened? I'm like, oh, right. I remember back in 1991 when that same ship visited Halifax Harbor, and I actually had a tour aboard her. And what was she? She was the Admiral Ustinov or something at that time. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But she and a frigate and an empty tanker. This is back when Russia was dead broke. Limped into Halifax Harbor to give us a. That's true. Give us a tour. One of the things I noticed was that even back then, everything looks like it's designed to be put on a flatbed and driven through Red Square. Looks really impressive from a distance. Got all the missiles along the sides and guns and radars and everything. Get up close and you look. Hey, wait, those things don't work. Wait a minute, where are all the wiring for those radar systems? Why does everything smell like potatoes and vodka? It's
so I've got for you a bottle of orange juice. Where's the juice? I've got for you a bottle of orange juice.
I don't see.
I gotta say though, they were very, very gracious hosts, and they were. It was a night that I wish I could remember better, but I'll leave it at that.
A night I wish I could remember. Okay.
Well, yes. We've all had those nights.
PJ has a comment here. How long now that child kidnapping and re-education of these children is happening, do you think Western powers will just take over the sky themselves and flood Ukraine with planes? I do not see NATO doing that. I see NATO as staying as hands off from this as possible. The moment that you get NATO forces in direct combat and conflict with the Russian forces, we're ramping up from DEFCON 4 to about DEFCON 3 in terms of our nuclear defense condition.
Right. NATO
cannot engage directly with Russia. That's just all the war games that I've ever seen and been involved with, and reports I've seen about this show that is an escalation ladder that we really do not want to get anywhere near.
Okay.
Yes. What's happening, and like I mentioned at the beginning there, when I said genocide, this is one of the aspects of it that I view as genocidal, is the re-education or the indoctrination of the Russians of the Ukrainian population and what they're doing. I'm very troubled by that, but at this point, from a military perspective, I don't see what we in the West can do to prevent that in the short term.
Mm-hmm. Now, if NATO getting involved is a bridge too far that they'll probably avoid. Yeah. We were saying that about tanks at one point, and most of us, or maybe half, are still saying that about jets. What are the odds that they are going to get the jets?
I would say better than 80% at this point.
Okay.
The winds seem to be shifting. I know that they've already been, the Ukrainian Air Force has already been doing a lot of training on these equipments. They've got their flight and ground crews in NATO countries working on these aircraft and learning the systems and everything. I think we're going to see a big change in the way that Ukraine prosecutes this war, strategically in the spring. Like I'm thinking we're by April, May, once the ground firms up, you're going to see a major counterattack. Got to remember this: the M1 Abrams, the T-72, well, I won't call them the Tiger 3, but the Leopard 2, and these NATO tanks were all designed to basically roll through the Ukraine and to fight these forces. So once they get their battalions organized, and they've already got experienced troops and forces with and that's another aspect of the attrition. I'm all over the place here, but the another aspect of the attrition when you're dealing with warfare is that when you're incurring casualties, war takes on it develops its own momentum. So a force that is getting weaker tends to get weaker faster. A force that is stronger tends to retain its strength and get stronger. What do I mean? When you've got an organization in the field, you've got your officer, your NCO, your senior non-commissioned officers, and your soldiers. If you've got a force where those guys are not being burned out and killed off on a daily or weekly basis, every time they go into combat, they're learning skills, they're learning things that are going to help them survive longer in combat. Ukraine has been able to conserve its soldiers and has done a very good job with casualty management and again logistics, but making sure that they're rotating people in and out of these positions here, so that they're retaining the expertise and they're growing their army. Russia is having the problem on the other side, where their forces are getting less and less competent. Ukrainians are getting more and more competent, which means that sometime this spring, the Ukrainian force is currently engaged in places like Bakhmut on the front, where Russia is attacking, are a fraction, or like a sizable fraction, but they're only using a portion of their military to defend. They're okay with that because they're building up their forces, they're building up the reserves for whatever they decide to do as a counterattack, whether it'll be in the north, the south, or right through Bakhmut. I don't know.
Okay. Unfortunately, we do have to go soon because Mr. Grizzly has to, somebody needs to be. And I wanted to ask you some questions about China, and we won't have time for that. But I do want to ask you one question, however, because you're a Navy guy. And recently, Canada just announced that we are going to be sending 2 ships to the Haiti area to help with some surveillance and monitoring, I believe, because of the situation over there. Do you know a little bit about what that would be, given you're a Navy guy? I was guessing that may have gotten your attention.
Well, this won't be the first time we've had a Haitian vacation. We usually do this every 10, 15 years. When things get really bad, or when there's a major disaster like the earthquake that they had several years ago. They like the problem. I don't know. Like the problem in Haiti. Like we can go and we can provide support and we can do some assistance. But the problems that what's going on in Haiti is a complete collapse and failure of their governance. And we've got a government, like the people who are currently in power in Haiti don't have a legal mandate to be in power because they never were elected. Were they, Grace? No, they weren't. So they don't have the legitimacy to do things like they're doing, which is pleading to the international community to come help us, because a lot of people in the community, like nobody for you. So anyways, the government can't do anything. Their police forces are ineffective. And so the entire country is basically living in a state of chaos that's being run by gangs and gang warfare. The reason they don't have resources or food or fuel or anything is because it's being restricted by these gangs in order to curry favor and to play politics with each other. It's like warlords basically. But I don't know. I think that'd be like sticking your finger in an electric pencil sharpener. I want to stay back from that for a little bit.
All right. Well, it seems
Great
that Gracie
advice.
is letting us know that we have monopolized her human for a little too long. So, kids, this is the end of this episode of the Daily Beaver podcast. We hope you loved listening to us because we loved making this for you. That was probably my best segue ever.
Thanks for coming out, Hugh. I'm gonna let you go now, and we're gonna wind up. Thanks for coming out. Appreciate it. Take care.
Yes. So thank you very much, Kit Hugh, for joining us. Kits, we hope that you loved this. Remember that sharing is caring and word of mouth is priceless, so let your peeps know about us. Because democracy is something you do, we still have a couple of days to help our brothers and sisters in Turkey and Syria. I haven't heard yet whether or not the donation time and amount will be extended given the additional quakes. But please, if you have the ability to help, do the neighborly thing. If you really like this podcast, you can find us on Crier Media Network as well as all Beaver Grizzly friendly platforms. Stars and reviews are greatly appreciated. Please be generous. We are very, very grateful. And we said so on our podcast, but we haven't said it on our main show. Thank you to Kit Cal, who supported us with a lovely and generous tip. And if you would like to do that, buying a cup of coffee for Mr. Grizzly here or a mug of hot chocolate for me, because my bowl is getting empty and I need a refill, then you can do that at our coffee page, ko-fi.com/eagerbeaver, all in one word, lowercase letters. That's ko-fi.com, eagerbeaver, lowercase letters, all in one word. And if you're watching us on the YouTube, then why not subscribe to our True North Eager Beaver YouTube channel, Beaver Incorporated YouTube channel, and that helps us out a lot, very much. And we've crossed the 160 mark, Kit. So slowly but surely, we're the little train that could, making our way to 1,000. We can't do this without your generous support. So, like we said, the coffee tip jars there for you. But if you are a savvy shopper and you'd like to you love a good deal, well, then we have some Eager Beaver merch for you. We have some stylish fashion. You can be styling, let everybody know that you're an engaged citizen, have everybody go, oh my God, who is that handsome person there, or that very, very, very fetching and elegant woman just standing there wearing Beaver merch? I have to talk to this person. So, hey, it increases your magnetism as well. Just let you know. All right, so we have something for everybody. Size is small to 3XL. Go to our crier.co media shop by scanning that QR code if you're watching, or go to crier.co/crier-crier. Let's try that again. crier.co/crier-media-shop, and then click all the things to go to True North Eager Beaver, and you'll find yourself some fabulous there. From the Beaver Lodge, this is your Eager Beaver saying, until next time, dear kids, it could be a tough world out there, so please be kind to and gentle with yourself, and do something really, really, really fun this weekend. Mr. Grizzly, how about some words of wisdom?
I have to pee. That's all I got.
And there you have
it. When you hold it for 90 minutes, you don't think about a whole lot.
And
what do? Right. I keep putting fuel to the fire by drinking more coffee. I'm not the smartest person in the world.
I could linger on here, kids, and make this little uncomfortable for Mr. Grizzly, but I'm not that kind of guy, so I'll just ask him to roll the credits.
Well, I can only...
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. CanadianTarot.com, your uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community and forum, and The Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from fresh farm ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind.
All right, kids, have a great weekend. I'm going to a kid's birthday party, so I'm going to be in my happy spot. I'll see you Monday.
I was fortunate last night to get out to see Kenny v. Spenny for the 20th anniversary edition of their tour. You notice the library, the shot from Spenny's library in the back.
Yes.
It was a good time, and I got to get to the office because, I got to pay some bills.
Okay.
See ya.
See.